I had a developer, great developer actually, come up to me with Slipknot T-shirt on, and he said, he comes up to my desk, he goes, "Mr. Will, what's our official drug policy?" Official, like, and he said, he's a slender 6'2", Slipknot wearing, got his hair back in a bun, and I looked at him and I said, Jim, here's the deal. I don't care if you smoke crack at your desk. As long as the work gets done, the work's get done. I'm an outcome guy. I care about the outcome. How you get to the outcome, that's kind of a you thing.
You're listening to Words of Mass Disruption with Eric Haynes.
Thank you for dialing into another episode of Words of Mass Disruption. I'm your host, Eric Haynes, and this is the podcast where we talk about disruption, business transformation, and we go behind the headlines with industry leaders. Today, my guest is a veteran of the recruiting world, Mr. William Tin Cup. He and I will be talking about the modern-day recruiting landscape from a candidate's perspective as well as a recruiter's perspective. With all the information available online these days, how are recruiters using the latest tools to be effective in their recruiting game? But first, I need to recruit you to do something for me. Whether you are driving to work, you're at the gym right now, going for a run, getting a few miles in on the bike right now, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast. Please leave a review, share it with at least one friend today or one coworker. Yes, please make it a point today to share this with at least one person. Okay, on to the show. I want to give Jim Hess at Leapfrog Executive Search a big shout out for connecting me to Mr. William Tin Cup. Jim, you were right. William and I are two peas in a pod. I'm very glad I got to meet William. William is the president of RecruitingDaily.com. He is a sought-after thought leader in the recruiting space, and he is on a numerous amount, I guess you would say, of advisory boards. William is a prolific writer with more than 200 articles, and he has been a speaker at more than 150 conferences. He has run his own podcast with more than 1,000 episodes. So let's jump right into the discussion or the conversation with William, and let's start with the landscape of recruiting and HR today.
I've been studying the kind of crossroads of HR and recruiting and technology for about 17 years now, and this is the fourth industry I've learned, and I love it. I mean, like I kind of sound like a fanboy because I am a fanboy. I absolutely love the innovation, and I keep track of all the companies kind of coming to market. So you got these huge companies like that have been around for 30 years, SAP and Oracle. Then huge companies like Ultimate Software and ADP, and you've got these little bitty tiny companies like PeopleCart that just launched, or some wellness app in Spain that no one's ever heard of. So you got and everything in between. Workday came to market in 2007. They're literally the darling of the industry. They hire really smart people, and so you got all kinds of different ways to solve kind of what I call like people-human talent issues at work. Human beings can only have three relationships with a company. You're either a candidate, an employee, or you're alumni. And there's all kinds of technologies to really assist and then to make people's lives better across that entire array. So what people used to call from hire to retire or hire to fire, depending on your depending on however like you kind of grew up, but they've got technologies now. So like even the stuff that used to be kind of really kind of paper based, and if you ever watched that movie Up in the Air with George Clooney, that was kind of an outplacement movie, and it was all about him flying in and kind of giving the bad news and then kind of giving them on to the next spot. Here's your package. Here's what you need to do to find your next job. Here's the story. Well, now they have all kinds of SaaS technology that actually helps with all that. So there isn't if that movie were made today, it wouldn't be about him being on a plane. That's happening in all across the entire employee life cycle. So in sourcing, you see things that are kind of like profile aggregators. You see tools that are out there that basically go and take all of your profiles, everything about you on the internet, if you will, and bring it up into one profile, a dossier, if you will. And so your LinkedIn profile and your Facebook, your Twitter feed, Instagram, and any blogs that you might have either commented on or your Stack Overflow questions you've asked, and they roll it all up into one kind of area, and then recruiters and sourcers can then go search for people inside of those databases. Incredibly helpful. Super, super helpful. I'm trying to find a kind of a needle inside of a haystack, inside of a tornado. As a sourcer, these tools, Hiring Solved, Hire Tool, hell, I could give you probably 100 names of companies that do this type of work, but they're essentially trying to make it easy for sourcers to find hard to find talent.
So let's focus this episode on the hiring experience. There are literally hundreds of tools to help sourcers find talent, but it starts with the candidate or the potential candidate. Whether we are actively looking for the next opportunity or not, we are out there in some capacity. We are out there in the online world where other people can find us. We don't even have to be on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or one of those other tools that recruiters look for or use to be actively looking for us. Every day when I open my email or my LinkedIn inbox, someone is trying to tell me about some amazing opportunity. I'm not out there looking, but every day someone's sending me something trying to recruit me. I'm sure you have the same experience. So whether you are actively seeking employment or the next opportunity or not, we do need to be aware of our online presence and the profile we have created. Think of it like this. If someone that didn't know you were to put together a dossier about you, what would they find online? What are some good things to keep in mind as we operate online every day and are constantly influencing how others might see us?
I tell every candidate, every company, there's fleas on the dog, and I do the exact same thing with every candidate. Hey, there's no one's perfect. No one expects you to be perfect. There's going to be that photo of you doing a keg stand. There's going to be that photo of you doing something that you probably wish that you weren't doing. And so that's true of companies and brands and their employer brand. And that's also true of candidates. So what I typically kind of tell both sides is just be yourself, be genuine. Don't try to be perfect. In fact, the more you try to act perfect on both sides, the more you're going to be found out not to be perfect. And I think that's it. Because you're seeing that play out actually in the kind of the larger meta entertainment industry and also in Silicon Valley, where people that you and I would probably have loved and respected and wanted to be around, but from Bill Cosby to Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, etc. Now we're learning some really deep and dark things about these people, and so now we have to almost kind of like rethink how we think about some of these folks. Well, the flea on the dogs for candidates and for companies aren't that dark. They might have made mistakes, but they're not that dark. So what I typically tell candidates is don't apply to 100 jobs a day. And what I tell the recruiting community is don't try to have 10,000 people apply to your job. If 10,000 people apply to your job, you've done something wrong, actually, because part of your job description and your employer brand in general is to repel. Again, Amazon's a great example of that. We're very smart. We're type A personalities. We work 120 hours a week. We don't care about work-life balance. Best idea wins, meritocracy. Like that's not necessarily a bad culture. That's their culture. And so, but by putting that front and center, that actually, I'm not going to apply. I'll never apply to a job at Amazon because I understand kind of who they are and what they're trying to do and what they want in their work culture. That's essentially like an investment banking job on Wall Street. I would never apply to an investment banking job on Wall Street, even if I had the skill set, because I don't want to. I have I have two kids. I have a great marriage. I don't want to work that hard. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I'll accept that I'll be paid less.
For most of our lives and the history of the industrial world, a recruiter relied on the candidate to provide information about themselves, like a resume. And then you had to decide whether you believed them or not. Long gone are those simple days of a resume and do I include a cover letter or do I not? Recruiters now have access to an amazing amount of information. In the past, they would call references or talk to past employers or coworkers to get more information about you. And then they had to correlate all that information and figure out what they wanted to believe or they didn't believe or what was important or not important. Then over the last 10 years, the information floodgates have opened up and everything we do is online, available to recruiters. At first, it was overwhelming and all this information could often work against us. All of a sudden, people could see all of the fleas on the dogs. And the natural reaction was being scared and to reject everybody because nobody was good enough. But now it has settled down and we have gotten used to all that information. Now it is about creative and smart ways of using tools and processing that vast amount of information to find the right candidates. And as potential candidates, it is important for us to be aware of what others might see and have access to. But do we always have to be on our best behavior?
Well, it's all about authenticity, quite frankly. If you believe strongly in, let's say, the legalization of marijuana, I live in the great state of Texas, and we will be the last state to ever legalize marijuana. That's just going to be the kind of the way it plays out. Everyone around us will, the entire country will have legalized it, and in Texas, will probably even start to consider it. But if you believe in that, like a former employee of mine runs the normal chapter for DFW, and he believes strongly in it. And that's actually a core belief for him is that there's medical uses for this. It's not just about it, watching Cheech and Chong movies and eating Doritos. There's a legitimate reason. There's back pain, there's glaucoma, there's anxiety, there's all kinds of different things that medical marijuana can treat. Well, if you really believe that, don't hide that. That's who you are. Because they're going to find out that, once you're there on the job anyhow. So, let's stop playing the game of hide and seek. I think two things have changed, Eric. I think one is we used to think that there were passive candidates. We used to think that there are active candidates, as in people are on job boards and they've posted their stuff and they're actively looking for a job, as opposed to people that haven't or are not doing something like that. The truth is they're all candidates. I'm a candidate. You're a candidate. Someone comes along with a job of a lifetime to you or I, we're going to consider it. Someone comes along and says, "Hey, I got a gig for you. It's in the Cayman Islands, and I'd like to set you up in $1 million home in the Cayman Islands, and I want you to do this. We're going to pay you $750,000, and it's guaranteed for 4 years." I don't know your situation.
Okay, I said I wasn't looking for a new opportunity, but sign me up for that one.
That's the point. You know what I mean? Like, if something comes along and it's just not too good to be true, but just it comes along and you're like, you know what? I hadn't quite considered that. I wasn't really looking, but you know what? That actually sounds like a pretty cool gig. Let's walk the dog. Let's kind of see where this goes. So that's changed dramatically. That people don't think in terms, in any terms of people being passive and active. There's just candidates. And so, what do we do to attract and repel said candidates? The other thing is it's almost a kind of a game, a race of authenticity, of how authentic can you be, and and put your best foot forward in terms of the work and competency and personality, but at the same time, not sell them a bag of goods that you're not.
It is amazing how often the concept of being authentic comes up in these conversations on this podcast. Authenticity has come up in leadership conversations, customer experience conversations, marketing, advertising, company culture, and now in recruiting. There might be something to this authenticity. I guess we are all really just storytellers preparing for and going after the next gig. The things we are doing now are informing that story we will tell later, or in fact, we are telling every day online in one way or the other. In the past, often the way we looked or dressed would be a major factor in whether we got a job or even into an interview. For decades, having a tattoo where someone could see it would be a career-limiting move. Now, having a tattoo is practically a prerequisite for many IT jobs and agency jobs.
I owned a web development company for a number of years ago, and I wouldn't hire a web developer that didn't have a tattoo or piercing. So it's almost like the opposite. Like I wouldn't even consider you. Like you're obviously not new. You're obviously too new to this game, or you're not going to be great at what you do. Like I had a developer, great developer actually, come up to me with Slipknot t-shirt on, and he said, he comes up to my desk, he goes, Mr. Will, what's our official drug policy? Official, like, and he said, he's a slender 6'2", Slipknot wearing, got his hair back in a bun, and I looked at him and I said, Jim, here's the deal. I don't care if you smoke crack at your desk, as long as the work gets done. The work's get done. I'm an outcome guy. I care about the outcome. How you get to the outcome, that's kind of a you thing. You need to take off. You want to go out in your car. You need to go do some things. I'm not going to stop you. B, I'm not going to encourage you. I just care about the outcome. So I think in certain industries, I think the beliefs have kind of come around to, those are less taboo. All of those things that we used to think were taboo, like, oh, you spent some time in the one of the vice industries, the porn industry or the drug industry or whatever. You know what? So I think in certain industries, I think the beliefs have kind of come around to, those are less taboo. All of those things that we used to think were taboo, like, oh, you spent some time in the one of the vice industries, the porn industry or the drug industry or whatever. You know what? Now people kind of look at that and go, okay, well, you obviously know certain things. Like you certainly your skill set is different. Okay, well, different's kind of good. Let's see what that's about.
So now we are bringing our taboos to work with us. And biases are a constantly changing thing and are certainly different in different organizations, countries, states, jobs, etc. So how do recruiters look past these ever-evolving biases and taboos and this abundance of information they have in front of them and get down to the real qualities and behaviors that they are looking for to fill the job?
We try as best in HR and recruiting to minimize the biases that we have. I think they still kind of come out in ways during the interviewing and recruiting process in general. But really what we want is we want the best candidate flow. We want to go deep with 10 people, let's say, and really try to figure out who's the best fit for the job, for them and for us. And I think that's one of and yet another thing that leaders outside of HR and recruiting are starting to figuring out, that it's not just about time to fill and putting butts in chairs, because if you make it just about putting butts in chairs, then what you've incentivized is hiring managers and recruiters to go and find a body. Just do you have a pulse? Great, sit down. We'll get you onboarded. And now I think that people are looking at that a little bit more and saying, no, we want people to come in that are going to stay, that are going to get to value quickly. And that's predicated on a lot of things. Like, what can we learn about them that's going to set them up for success? What's going to get them to a place where they're happy and content and doing great work fast? So there's a different metric that's coming along that I really, I'm encouraged by. And it's not time to fill. It's more of a time to value, where people are starting to look at, how fast can we both hire the person and onboard them and do all the things we have to do, but then how fast can we get to the point where they're adding value to the firm? And it's looking at things both ways. It's looking at it, is this a good fit for you? Is this a good fit for us? And if we can make the decision that this is a good, we're both adults. If we can make the decision that this is a good fit for the two of us, well, let's give it a shot.
So there are some very popular names we hear about quite often. We hear about ZipRecruiter and Indeed and Dice and Ladders and LinkedIn. But are those the only tools they're using? Are recruiters using Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, Snapchat? How are they using these new tools, these social platforms, to find candidates, to source new candidates, and to build their pipeline?
People use Tinder to recruit. So imagine, you're talking about social media, thinking legit social media like Instagram or Facebook. Yes, they're using all those tools to source. That they're using things that we're not normally thinking about to source, like Skype, like Tinder, like thinking about any application, whether you use a profile. So your Hilton Honors account. How can I use Hilton Honors to source candidates? So sourcers in our community, at least, I've always viewed the sourcing community as the hacking community of HR. So if you have this broad array of, from hire to retire, that group of people that are way out in front of recruiters, sometimes they've been recruiters, sometimes they play both roles, the sourcer and the recruiter. I view that community as white hat recruiters. Those are the folks that are out there trying to break stuff and find ways to find talent for their organization. And so if it's distinct communities like technical talent, then they're looking obviously at Stack Overflow and GitHub, but they don't stop there. Then they start looking at Reddit and conversation threads that are happening in Reddit. And how can I find the people that are really witty, smart, and potentially competent, and then work backwards?
So one thing I know all of you, it just bothers you. What is a recruiter there for? Why am I talking to a recruiter? I'm annoyed to talk to a recruiter. They don't know anything about what I'm doing. They read the word Angular on a bulleted list and they say, do you know that? And they have a couple prepared questions about it. They ask about blockchain or AI. And they don't even know what the difference is between machine learning and AI in most of our opinions. So what is their role? Is their role to know that stuff? Is their role to be able to relate to me on a technical level or on a job level? Or is it really just to connect on a personal level to get me to the right person?
They're just finding them. That's their job. Their job is to find them. They pass the recruiter. Once they find them and vet them, they don't really have to talk to the candidate, and in most cases they don't. Their job is really to find the talent, find that needle in the haystack in the tornado. So that's their job generally. Now, if it's a small shop, then they have to then find them and then kind of start to pre-qualify them. But a lot of the times they pass that. Here's the 10 people that you should be really looking at. Found them all over the world, all over the internet, using all kinds of different means and tools. Here's the 10. And then the recruiters will go and then start to kind of like, hey, got a job. Think this might be good for you. And that's when they're using different types of tools like Text Recruit. It's a great example of something that's really kind of modernized recruiting. Is they're not emailing and voicemailing these people. So take that instance where the sourcer, through all kinds of means, found 10 candidates for a technical position. They pass them over to the recruiter, and the recruiter, instead of voicemailing them, "Hey Ted, I have this job that I'd like to talk to you about," or this email or in mail, they're texting them, and they get their cell phone number, and so they text them and say, "Hey, listen, I've got a job that I think would be great for you. I've looked at your profile. Take a look at it. If you're interested, we'll set up some time, 15 minutes to talk about it. And then, no worries and no pressure. Just go take a look at it and see if it's something you'd like to get into." And that type of that fits the people under, I would say 35, but really probably 30. Text recruiting fits them better than voicemail recruiting or email recruiting.
So you're probably in the similar situation I am, and every day you open up your email, you open up your LinkedIn, and you just are getting inundated by recruiting opportunities. And often they don't even fit. They don't even make sense. There was one I posted about recently about they keep offering me like a hazardous material job, and I think a dishwasher job. Now, there's lots of funny jokes about that, and we've had a lot of fun with it. But, there seems to be this strategy of volume. And a lot of companies haven't learned how to get away from that. So if I'm going out looking for a job, should I be, going after 1,000 jobs and take the one that, makes the most sense or the first one that responds back to me? And if I'm recruiting for people, do I want 20,000 people responding to 2 jobs or 2 or 3 positions? It doesn't seem like that makes sense anymore. So, what are some good ways that we should approach the hiring process from both sides?
Well, first of all, I think only apply to jobs that you really care about. Only apply to companies that you really can see yourself in. So it's really easy to vet companies these days, both Google, Comparably, Glassdoor. There's all kinds of different tools to look up companies, to look up people. And so if you can't see yourself really kind of, I tell candidates today, can you see yourself getting the tattoo of that company's logo on your wrist? On the back side of your wrist. Can you see? Yeah. Can you see yourself getting that tattoo? And if you can't, why are you applying to a job? Like really deep. Think about it. If you really don't believe in the mission and the values and the ethics and the morality and kind of the products and services and all that stuff, then why are you applying? So on one level, there's that. The other is be you, and that authenticity, excuse me, that goes deep. That goes down to a nervous. It's going to almost scare you about how authentic you should be. So that authenticity should get you to a place where you're so authentic it almost scares you. That it cuts really, really, really deep. But I think that the research that candidates do these days is I think it's really good. They Google, first of all, a lot of the jobs are referred to them. Secondly, they Google the jobs. And they Google the company and they try to learn. They Glassdoor the company. And another new trend that I love that candidates are doing is they go into LinkedIn and they look for former employees. And there's no laws that govern what a former employee can say to a candidate. So from HR to HR, if I ask you for a reference, there's rules, things I can ask and can't ask. But from a former employee to a candidate, there are no rules. So a candidate can say, "Hey, was the boss of this, that, or the other," and the former employee can say whatever they want, whatever they feel, whatever they believe. They could do it in Glassdoor, but they could do it on an email. And so we've paid so much attention to the employer brand on the front end that, the attraction side of trying to position ourselves and make ourselves look good on the front end, we've kind of forgotten that when people exit our company, it's just as important to manage that part of the employer brand. And whether or not they left because it was our choice or their choice, that's not really the point. The point is we've got to do a better job of managing that part of the employer brand, because candidates have figured out, I can go talk to your former employees and they're going to tell me the truth.
So, pro tip, when you're doing research on a job or a person that you're going to be working for, you can use LinkedIn to get a lot of information about that opportunity, that company, or that person. People are willing to share information, especially bad information, unfortunately. So get out there, connect, figure out who's talked to who, see if they're being recommended, see who you know that knows them. So over the years, marketing tools have popped up in the marketplace to really take advantage of this information age that we're in. They've targeted traditional marketing strategies to get to customers. But over the last few years, these tools have been reappropriated by savvy recruiters to market to talent and remarket to them as well. The process for getting talent and building the pipeline for talent has become a marketer's game. Previously, we had David Meerman Scott on, and we talked about the new seller as a marketer and how those skills of a marketer help the new seller advance. And now we are saying the new recruiter is a marketer. It's the same thing. Recruiters are sellers. They are selling the company brand, they are selling the culture of the company, and they have to know how to use these tools much in the same way a seller would prospect for a customer.
All the marketing automation tools that came to market, since 2000, let's say, so Eloqua and Marketo and HubSpot, a lot of those tools then started to kind of permeate into recruiting. And so once we'd find talent, we'd start to market to that talent. So we'd start to put content together to market to that talent so that we would get them to then come back to their career site, find a job they like, get them to apply. So that's typically those systems are called CRMs, candidate relationship management. And so you have sourcing, then you have all kinds of assessment, then there's CRMs, and then once they apply, then they go to ATS, and then from ATS, you get either hired or you go back into the system. So that's kind of on the recruiting side. There's all kinds of marketing that's happened inside of recruiting, and it's been a revolution, I'd say, probably 6-7 years. And so you have firms like Smashfly and Telemetry and Clinch and Avature and 100 others that are kind of leading the way of how do you market to candidates? Now that you have them, how do you market to them? How do you get them to take an action?
So what have we learned today? We learned that companies and employers need to pay as much attention to how people exit their companies as they do to try and attract the talent in the first place. We also learned that LinkedIn can be a very effective tool to help us do research for our next opportunities and choosing the people we'll work with in the future. We also learned that traditional tools are just a small part of the toolbox when we are telling our story and putting ourselves out there for new opportunities. And traditional tools are also just a fraction of the tools in the toolbox of the recruiters that they have at their fingertips to try and recruit us. If you were worried that Big Brother is always watching, well, think about this. Your next employer is watching. When I look back on my career, I can think of just a few times a recruiter actively engaged with me as an employee to farm my network or look for talent. I was the top employee almost every year at one company, and no one ever sat down and teamed up with me to help build the talent pipeline. Now, I may not know how to go use my LinkedIn to find those folks, but those recruiters should know how to do it, and they should be approaching me and working with me to help do that. I have worked at other places where recruiters became my best friend because the smart ones knew I could make them money. I could make the company stronger and I could help build that pipeline. And they also knew the strength of tapping a strong team members network to find other quality team members. I have recommended people that have gone on to be top talent at companies I worked at, and nobody still came to me and tried to leverage my network. It's not just their loss as a recruiter, it's a loss to the company. I would get the standard email that we've all received. We're looking for this list of people, bullet, bullet, bullet. So take a good look at where you work, because I will bet that if your recruiting is weak, then your marketing is weak, and therefore your sales are suffering. So thanks, and see you guys next week.
Words of mass destruction. Words of mass destruction.
I understand. I mean, I know that cursing, quote unquote, cursing is not for everyone, and I do get it. I don't hold judgment against someone else if they're offended by my cursing. I also don't try